70s. Hey, that's good to know, isn't it? He says, of all the assets on our balance sheet, the most important is the brand, even though it isn't capitalized at all. So I imagine if you took a blank check to Memphis, I think where FedEx is, and said, I want to buy FedEx, the logo, they wouldn't sell it to you, right? It's worth more than all their planes and boxes and all their operations combined. And you can go down the line with Apple or Coca-Cola, whatever you want to put on that. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about branding versus marketing. I do like to tee this up a bit for audiences such as this, because there is a big difference, even though it's almost daily confused, right? It's one and the same. I want to talk about the C-suite psyche and how to really understand that. And then really important, the 3 everlasting tenets of a brand. And we're going to talk about that in theory and then show you that in practice. And then the regular moments of Zen that I always have to tack on to every time I talk to somebody. So you just got to bear with me on the Zen stuff. All right, branding versus marketing. Okay, branding is why, marketing is how. Branding is long-term, marketing is short-term. Branding is a macro view, right? It's the 30,000-foot view. Marketing is micro. How many clicks, how many visits, what did that ad cost? Branding defines a trajectory, okay? Marketing defines the tactics. Branding builds loyalty and marketing builds response. Branding creates value and marketing tends to extract the value. Like, did we get the sale, right? Branding is the being, who are you? And marketing is the doing. It's like this. It's like love and spreadsheets. and these two have never got along, like in the history of Earth, right? Art and commerce. You can go back to the gentleman who painted the Sistine Chapel ceiling. And if you've ever been there, when you turn around on the wall, there's painting on the wall there too. And the person who was supposed to pay him for the ceiling didn't pay him enough. And so he painted his likeness in purgatory up on the wall, right? So forever in the history of Earth and forever forward, art and commerce will never get along. And that's how I think of brand. That's how I think of the C-suite trying to run a business and brand, right? There's just an inherent friction there. These brand feelings defy formulatic explanations. And yet, the C-suite wants proof, ROI, data, what happened, measurables, prove it, and very linear sometimes, very evidence-based decision-making. And brand and feeling and instincts and gut and love and passion isn't an evidence-based field, and yet here we are, right? So it's a perpetual conundrum. If you're marketing, I'm not sure who our audience is here. We may have agencies here too, but if you're in marketing, remember you're marketing the brand, not branding the marketing. And so many times I see marketing's function is just putting their logos on things, and that's really not what we're doing. This is an interesting chart, and really brand has been dulled over the years by overuse. It's just really overwrought, and everybody, logo is a brand. I get nauseous when I hear people talk about their personal brand. It's really not a thing. This chart shows, if you got to Google, you can search their search history. So from the time they started tracking this in 2004 till today, the searching for marketing has gone down and the search word for brand has gone up, and they've really kind of changed places. And I don't know what the story this really tells, other than brand has become synonymous with marketing, and brand is everything. And you hear everybody on the street say brand, and even in today's name, image, likeness with college athletes, they talk about brand this, brand that, brand that. But I really want to get to the heart of what brand really is, okay? In a commercial sense, branding is reputation stripped for export. And what I mean by stripped for export is put into the simplest of terms that are meaningful and can go right to someone's heart, right? People don't have a lot of mental calories in reserve to figure you out. They're just not going to burn a lot of mental calories to understand who you are, why you matter, why you're different, all those things. So the stripping for export is to create the shortest possible distance between who you are and what you want them to feel. Let's get into the C-suite psyche. So I've had the privilege of presenting to boards for decades, to the C-suite. And in that time, I've developed this little tool to help you understand these folks, all right? They're a different species sometimes. This chart is called the professional interest chart. And basically, what really matters when you're talking to anyone in your life, or the C-suite in particular here today on this Zoom, is not what you say, it's how it's received, right? It doesn't matter what you say, it matters how it's received. And so this chart can inform you like what resonates with one audience may repel another, okay? So like the demographics, the psychographics, the culture, these professional interests will help you figure out how to approach each audience. And there's a common blind spot in marketing and creative people, that they assume most people have creating sensibilities, and many in the C-suite do not have creating sensibilities. So as we go around this wheel, if you're a business here, maybe you can identify roughly your industry, all right? And there's 4 primary archetypes here. So there's the creators, and then here is architecture firms, art, writing, music. There's discovering, and a lot of medicine fields happen in this zone. Preserving would be government, military, religion. And in applying, we're talking about business at large, but education, law, etc. You can strike a line right down the middle. And if you're talking to folks over here, they're going to manage their company by objective largely, right? These are kind of terms of art. Let me go back a slide. So their primary instinct is process. So A, B, C, D, linear, and then the right brain folks over here, they're going to manage by subject, and purpose, okay? And so the kinds of language, and this isn't like dogmatic, right? You're going to mix this up, but the kinds of words that are going to resonate on the left half are for sure, expect, is, fact, proof, reliable, consistent, conventional, maintain, control, complete, confidential, satisfy, protect, constraint. Those are the kinds of words you're going to weave into the conversation when you're trying to get things for your brand, when you're trying to sell things, get more budget, right? If you're over here on the right, you're going to use language like, what if this will excite this audience. Wonder, could be, dream. Don't be afraid to use the word love, new, better, different, make, breakthrough, innovation, eye opener, wow, dare, let's go for it. Those kinds of words are going to excite that audience. So it's really important that you understand who you're talking to and how that message is going to be received. Be really careful if you're doing creative work in this preserving mindset. This is a tough place to be creative. You can look at a tax form, right? And you can see the government, or if anybody has any military experience, you can see how it's so bureaucratic and layered, and the acronyms, right? There's a funny story about boot camp in the military. Is you have a bunk. What's the thing at the end of your your bed. It's like a trunk where you keep your stuff, right? There's a name for it. I can't think of it right now. And then you have to put everything in that play in exactly the right place, and they judge you on it, right? The soap goes in the top left, and these items are folded in the bottom right, and they open that up and they critique it. And it doesn't matter where your soap is. It doesn't matter where the pants are in the trunk. What matters is, can you follow a rule? And that's all they're testing, is can you follow these rules? So if you're in the creative field or marketing field, be really careful in this zone. It's going to be an uphill battle, right? Because they're really about process. One other thing to keep in mind here is the law of entropy. All right, I want to talk about this too. This is obviously an analogy or a metaphor here, this sand, but organizations aren't single objects. They're made up of all these constituent parts, like these grains of sand. And entropy is really a measure of how many ways can I rearrange these grains and still keep the sand pile intact. So if you look at this, you could mush your hands around that a trillion different ways and still have that pile of sand, right? So this has a very high level of entropy. On the other hand, so your organization might be like that. It can be mushed around and it's still what it is. The culture still thrives. Or you might have this, right, where you add structure to it, and one little nudge against it breaks it, right? And so again, this is sort of the left half. If you have an organization where everything is structured and one little nudge shatters it, or do you have an organization like this where it's a lot more free form? You can't mess it up. So it's important to know sort of the overarching C-suite psyche to how the organization is structured. Is it more loose and high entropy, or is it low entropy like this that really demands process and routine and predictability? This is how the C-suite should think of branding. If they don't, take this into them, all right? It's not logos. It's not colors. It's not packaging. It's not your website. It's none of that stuff. The goal of branding is to influence people to buy more things at a higher price for more years, period. That's it. That they will light up when you say that. That's really what they want to do, okay? So that's how they should think of it. That's how we should think of it as well. We're trying to influence people. That's it. That's all we're trying to do. I'm going to share this is, I Googled cheap wristwatch, and this is one of the first images that showed up, okay? So knowing that the search criteria was cheap, you probably, like me, would think that copper color or whatever that is would rub off on your wrist after wearing it once. That ribbon is just really cheap and poor, and this thing weighs like an ounce, it's going to break in a millisecond. But if I do this one little thing to it, right, I just put those 5 words in a crown right in the middle of it, something changes. Something happened in your gut just now. It's a heavier. This thing is worth $1,000. This was my grandfather's. This band is like what they make Olympic medals out of. It would live forever, right? And that's what branding is. It's whatever triggered in your brain, in your gut, in your heart, whatever you felt when I did that little thing to it, right there. That's what branding is, okay? And the famous director, Stanley Kubrick, says the truth of a thing is in the feel of it, not the think of it. So the truth, the feel of it will always win out over the think of it, always, period. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to get the feels, okay? And people, when you saw that Rolex logo or put any other brand you want in any other analogy, it's about trust. I trust that. And this is the formula for trust. It's equal parts reliability plus delight. It's got to be the same. I got to count on it. They got to be there for me. whether you're an accounting firm or whether you're an airline or your Uber or Airbnb or Apple laptop, but it has to delight me. That's how I get the trust. You can talk to your C-suite about this too, right? How do we make trust? Well, we got to be reliable, and that'll appeal to the left brainers, and we got to be delightful, and that'll appeal to the right brainers. So that's our yin yang. In another sense, the difference between marketing and brand is marketing versus mattering, and brands matter. Ads don't really, right? We all have banner blindness. We all can skip over commercials, and everybody says they hate TV commercials, but when there's a good one, everyone talks about it, right? So this is a snapshot of the history of what we're doing, our field. A century ago, it was about features. What is it? These are pants. This is corn. Then it's what it does. These pants protect you, right? And then it's how you feel. Like this, don't you feel sexy in these pants? And now it's who you are. Like this, your identification. We're still in the throes of this, where you live, what car you drive. Someone back when Prius came out, buying a Prius said it just as much about that person as it did about anything else, about Toyota, right? And there's many, many other brands. You can kind of come to that conclusion about someone using an Android phone versus an iPhone. It says a lot about them, or it drives a Tesla, or where they live, or you name it. So we're still in the throes of branding. The mattering part is I identify with this. This is who I am. So marketers really need to stop designing products and services and start designing customers, because they are the brand. They matter, right, the most. Like this is a quintessential sort of low-hanging fruit example, but Harley, they've designed this customer. This is their brand right here. If you said, what's our brand? And you showed a logo, you'd be doing a disservice. This person out in the open air, this is their brand. And there's other ones too that have popped up in recent times. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, you would never get in a stranger's car and go for a ride, right? Everybody's parents told them not to do that. Or stay in some stranger's house. I didn't stay anywhere unless I had Marriott or Hilton or whatever attached to it. I wouldn't just walk into someone's home. And so brands have made these things okay, these feelings. This is the work of branding, right? And branding is what they say it is when you're not in the room. And by they, I mean the customer, the market. All right. And here's every single person right now in the world. They all have their heads down in a phone. And obviously you're not in this room, right? It's them and them looking at things, and you're not in the room. And everybody here has a million megawatt broadcast channel to say whatever they want about your brand on any platform they choose. So it's what they say it is. And they're increasingly empowered, to have enormous options to switch between brands. You can just switch at the drop of a hat. It's really not about the product. It's about how they feel about the product. Right. So when you're talking to your C-suite, make sure you're talking about the feelings of the product and not so much about the product itself. Brand is 100% synonymous with reputation. If we just got rid of brand and called it reputation, that would work. Brand is reputation, and reputation is customer gut feelings, and customer gut feelings are brand. That's all one infinite loop right there. And you can't launch a brand. People say they launch a brand. They didn't launch a brand, because you don't launch a reputation. You earn a brand, just like you earn a reputation. All right, I want to talk about a bit of a theory here that I've been working on for many years, and this is the first time I've talked about it out loud. In life, almost everything comes down to threes, right? small, medium, large, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. And I think the same thing is true for a brand. So you have the brand in one corner, you have the purpose of the organization in another corner, and you have the culture in another corner. And this is a vortex. These things have tension and release that are coming in and out of each one of them all the time. And this is a great chart that I think you can talk to the C-suite about, so they understand the role of brand, and they understand the role of culture, and they understand the role of leadership. So the culture here carries the brand, right? When you work in an organization, or you're you're the barista at Starbucks, or you're the front desk, or you're the email person, you're carrying the brand, right? The culture carries that forward. But the brand depends on the purpose. Like, why is this here? Why do you exist? If you didn't exist, what would be missing in the world if your company wasn't around? And the purpose creates the culture. So this is just a consistent cycle between these three ideas. But there's a counter tension to this. The brand pushes the culture. So I expect to be able to order my coffee and come pick it up and it be ready. The brand expects me be able to switch my flights without getting a penalty. The brand expects to be able to enter your home without having to meet you first, and you better have a passcode on the thing. And right, so that's pushing the culture. And the culture is limited by the leadership, by the purpose. And the purpose keeps getting changed by the brand. So here's Harley Davidson now has to create electric motorcycles, right, that aren't as macho as what they have today. And so these forces all work together. And if you were to redefine these corners of the triangle, you could call it customers depend on leadership. Leadership creates the employees. The employees carry the customer. Leadership gets changed by the customer. The customer pushes the employees, and the employees are limited by leadership. Or one other way to think of this is the gut feelings depend on the reason why, and then they create the what and the how, and they create the gut feelings. All right, back and forth. These are all synonyms. So let's put this to the test. One more thing. Another way to think about it is hopes and hurts, right? This is a good exercise to talk to your C-suite about. What hopes do you have for the customer? What hurts do they have? What hopes do you have for the employees? What hopes do you have for the vision? What are the hopes and hurts? And you can start to sketch out your own organization's brand vortex. And it could look like this, right? A good question to ask your C-suite is, or you might even have it, the feelings of it is, where is the power? Where does the money go? Right? Where is all the influence? Is it equilateral? Is there a lot of power in leadership? Is there a lot of power in employees? The culture, like everyone bends over backwards for the culture, the employees. Is the customer number one? A lot of organizations say that, but do they really mean that? And so your triangle could be pulled and pushed in many directions. It could look like any one of these shapes, right? Which one has the most power? Which one has the most energy towards it? And think of it in 3 dimensions. So imagine, I'm going to go back a slide. If you were this triangle, this has weight to it, and it's pulling. The energy is pulling there, like the persistence of memory clock here. So imagine this is culture way down here, and it's pulled down. There's just a ton of heft and weight and energy. And to move back uphill towards purpose, or move back uphill towards customer, takes a lot of energy. So think about these shapes in 3 dimensions. So let's test the Harley Davidson in practice here. All right. So their what and how is big, loud motorcycles. That's what they do. The gut feeling is that these are for macho guys and macho wannabes. Right. That's the brand. That's what that picture was earlier. And the why does Harley exist? Because we want to join a gang of cowboys in an era of decreasing personal freedom. That's it. This is their brand vortex. And so the big loud motorcycles carries this gut feeling that they're macho. And this macho thing depends on their why, that they want to sort of be these rebels and be cowboys. And that created this big loud motorcycle as a symbol of that, right? But today, maybe it's not so about macho, it's more about metrosexual and um, your pronouns and other things are changing, right? Their gut feelings are changing. So that's pushing. Oh man, they came out with an electric motorcycle now. I think they actually have a bicycle now. So that's changing the what and the how they do things. But it's still limited by this overarching purpose of being a rebel, and see how that works together, how that all flows. This is something you should discuss with your C-suite so they understand the role of brand, the role of employees and culture, the role of leadership and their position in it. How am I doing on time? Okay, like 5 minutes left.
You're doing good. Terry's going to be sending out a message with 5 minutes remaining that you should see pop up. So got about 10 actually, just under.
Okay, cool. So I got a couple more slides and we can have some questions if there are any. This is something I can't resist doing, some moments of Zen. I really believe in brand change. I just think if you're maintaining the status quo in your life, with your company, with your marketing department, you will fail. Ultimately, you will fail. And Frank Zappa here with the crazy hair. Without deviation from the norm, progress is not possible. You just can't have progress and stick to what works always, right? So I really hope that I'm a proponent of change. I love change. I love brand change. I love brand evolution. And I love brand revolution sometimes. Everything marketers do should be in service of the brand, okay? Your reputation in the customer's gut. It's like this BLT. Every other flavor in that sandwich is in service of the tomato, okay? Like bread is super reliable, bacon is good almost every time. You can't screw up mayonnaise. Lettuce is just there. But the tomato, is it ripe? Is it mushy? Is it sweet? Is it in season? Right? The brand is everything for your company. The brand is the tomato. So when you talk to your C-suite, let them know 80% of this is brand. Why don't we have a chief brand officer? Marketing is a subset of brand. Brand is everything. I know everybody says it, it's overwrought, it's overused, it's dulled, but brand is so incredibly powerful. It's everything, right? I think the people on this call right now undoubtedly have one brand that if it left planet Earth, they would mourn it, right? Mine would be Apple. Almost every other thing in my life can be replaced and I wouldn't skip a beat. The car I drive, the clothes I wear, shampoo, the accounting firm I use, any of it can go away. But if I didn't have an iPhone and I had to use an Android, no offense to folks who are on here that like that, but me, I would weep like, oh my God. And that's not going to be, I have to figure out how to do my work in Windows or something. It would be devastating. So everybody has that, right? Nobody has a Suzuki tattoo. Millions have Harley tattoos, right? And there's a reason why, because they've connected with the soul of that customer. So think about it like that. One thing that's always mixed up in this is design, right? That's great branding. And they're talking about the shapes and the colors and the fonts and the typography. Design absolutely has a role in this. And it's really to set expectations and to fit and be like the most advanced yet acceptable. And here's an example of that. When you get on an airline, you expect your pilot to look like this, right? They shirt is pressed. It doesn't have stains on it. It's tucked in. They've got those two things on the shoulders, whatever those are called. This is how I demand a pilot to look. And it could be male, female, anything, but they have to look this certain way. Otherwise, if they came in and their shirt was untucked, or they're wearing a hoodie, or had a hat on backwards or something, I would instantly, like, my gut would go, something is wrong here. That person's flying this plane, right? Or even if you looked out the window and you feel like you're about to push back and you see the pilot loading luggage, like, what are you doing? There's more important things to do here. So design has to set expectations and has to meet expectations. There's expectations for a 5-star restaurant. There's expectations for a food truck. There's expectations for how food should be delivered and the packaging and how it all should work together. I mean, Apple, going back to them, they've raised the bar so incredibly high on packaging. Remember when they first came out and you're like, oh my God, they spent so much time on how to send me this laptop. In the meantime, in the exact same moment in time, if you ordered a Windows machine, it was like a brown box with 4 other boxes in it, all of different shapes, just rattling around with air bubble stuff and something from this manufacturer, something from that one. You're opening 17 different plastic garbage things. And so they've set expectation that's really democratized what design means. You can't go to a grocery store and find bad packaging. You just can't. The bar is too high. So that's design's role. It has to be good, right? And it has to be where the customer expects it to be. One thing that I want to promote, I am going to do a little pitch here. Really proud of our team. We've lifted this off the ground. We've developed a whole new side business called Pivot, and it's a brand change masterclass. We launched our website last night. So if you go to pivotmasterclass.com, you can see a movie trailer there of me, my talking head about the class. It's about a minute and a half or so. You can sign up for early access. Our classes will be online. They'll be really affordable. And you can do this work yourself as an organization. We're going to give you all the tools and techniques and tips and tricks of decades of doing this through a master class, self-guided, all online tutorials on how to change your brand and how to think about it, how to talk to the C-suite. All those things will be embedded in this. So I invite you to go to that website and sign up, and we'll tease out when this launches. It should be this fall. So really excited about that. Thank you. That's all I have today. Jenna, back to you, or should we open it up for some questions in the chat, or if somebody
I know
wants
Nicole has a question. So Nicole, you can feel free to unmute yourself or use the chat, whatever you prefer.
Sure. I'll just not delay and forget my camera because I can't seem to get it going. Oh, there it is. Anyway, thank you so much for the timely information. We're actually going through a process where we just did a bunch of research on our brand. I work for a foundation here locally, and I'm interested in what you said about reputation. Unfortunately, from our beginnings, we did not have the most transparent reputation, and I've been fighting that for over 5 years now. And it just seems like in our results, we've found that people still don't feel that we're transparent. So I guess, is that just the long game there, or is it going to take a refresh? Kind of what advice would you give for things that were done before your time that you're sort of coming up against, even though you've changed your ways maybe?
It's really difficult to erase those things, like the long shadows of that just haunt, and it almost becomes folklore.
Mm-hmm.
And that stuff can haunt you in a really, I don't know that you're going to be at this level, but in a really abrupt sense, you can completely rebrand, right? And this has happened with the Enron scandal. This is the sort of the quintessential example, but the accounting firm that was a part of that euthanized that brand and launched a new one called Accenture. And so
Okay.
that's a big revolution. If you said we're going to shut this down and start a new one, and we're going to form all new feelings from that, and you're going to cherry pick the equity that you want to bring over.
Sure.
We still do this work, we still do that, but we're calling ourselves that. And those moments, that could be a big change, like a completely different name, or it could be a shift of a name, or a shift of this. And one of the things that's really important in that is trying to figure out what has to go and what has to stay. Like most people, when they're talking about brand change, get really nervous because change in general is difficult, because that future self doesn't agree with their current self. And so they're like, I like what I have now. In your case, maybe you don't like what you have now. So you might have to make a pretty big pivot. But when you signal change like that, what it does is it opens a door to tell folks what's different, what's new. You'll see this in weird ways. Like sometimes the restaurants will say under new management. They'll put a banner out. And that's to say, like, come back, our service is better, or our French fries are no longer cold, or whatever they're trying to signal, right? It happens all the time in big, small ways. But if you signaled some change, your audience, your customers, your philanthropic community, whatever that audience is, they'll invite you to tell them why. And that's your platform to do change. If you still say the same things, you still look the same way, you don't have enough momentum to say for someone to go, it's different now. It's different there, right? So that'd be my advice, is to try to signal some change, either small, medium, or large, and then tell them what's different and why. Other than that, it's just going to be like the long game of, I no longer call it the whatever Quest Center in downtown Omaha, right? It just took like a decade to not call it that anymore. It just kind of fades out.
Yeah, well, that's helpful. Thank you. I also really enjoyed your sort of triangle and with the circles, because I feel like that's sort of illustrated part of our problem too, is we haven't been as focused on those customers. So
yeah, and there's really no right answer there. I mean, there's no right answers in any of this stuff. There's only decisions. There's such a, right now, if you watch a lot of commercials, so many founders are like the face of the company these days. The Untuck It guy, Bombas socks guy, the Dollar Shave Club guy, they're all putting themselves in front and center, which is good and bad, right? Because there's so much power when the C-suite gets on board with branding. And it can hurt you too. Like when Steve Jobs died, the market rate cap of Apple went down because Steve Jobs was Apple. How are they going to maintain this? And that's true. We all probably felt that, like, oh my God, is this stuff still going to be this good if you're an Apple person without him on the planet? And so it's kind of a double-edged sword. I think customers should be the biggest circle, where all the energy goes, because obviously they pay the bills, they are that. And even founders who have a great big idea have to still fit that into what the market wants and what they care about. And this is really a crash course in this work. Underneath each one of those corners is a whole lot of work about the customer, the persona building. What are their mores? What do they want? And underneath the purpose and the leadership is all mission, vision. What do you see? All those things, right? So there's a lot to unpack in each one of those corners. But again, this is the first time I've really shown this to anybody, so I appreciate the feedback on that vortex. Thank you.
Thank you.
You and I can just talk all day. All right, we'll just hang out.
Is there questions from anybody else in the room? I completely empathize with your if we had to take Apple out of our lives, it's the connectivity of everything. I don't know what I would do.
What would you do if you had to, like, I don't know, get a PC? I don't know. That's for me.
Yeah.
And some people, I've asked that question to other audiences and they say Toyota or they say other things, right? And that's fine too. Everybody has something. Yeah. Logan, I would cry literally. I would too. I would shed a freaking tear.
Yeah, the few times that I've had to use a PC in the last 10 years, I'm like, okay, how do I open like a Word document? Like, where do I go to find these applications?
I know.
It's just
like,
so foreign.
It is so foreign. And I'm sure we would learn that over time, but still, I remember my first, smartphone, I'm probably the oldest person on this call, was a BlackBerry. And the troubleshooting of a BlackBerry was to remove the battery and then put it back in. It's like, oh my God. I remember I got my first iPhone and I've never restarted it ever.
Mhm.
And it's like, that to me is why I would shed a tear, because now I have to do that again, Control Alt Delete or whatever. You know?
Right.
Yeah. Like,
Well, we do have about 2 minutes left. I just saw Terry's note come through. Any other last minute questions for Greg before we're hopping back into our main room?
fight your way into the C-suite. Okay. Get a seat at the table and make them believe it, that this is so, so, so important. It's worth more than all their factories, warehouses, spreadsheets, all that combined. It's those feelings, those gut feelings, you know, and it takes a lot of care and a lot of quality to influence those. So it's a really high value thing for organizations. Go in there on
Absolutely.
your knees and beg for the money and the power and the influence. You deserve it as marketers.
Alrighty, guys. Well, thank you for joining us. If you make your way back to that main space, just utilize that blue button in the bottom right corner there. We'll hang out here until Terry closes out the room if there are any last minute questions, but thank you for joining, and thanks again, Greg.
Thanks, Jenna. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.